Welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining me today because we're going to explore one of the most fascinating continuous operations happening inside of you right this very second. We often think of breathing as just taking air in and letting it out, right? But beneath that simple action is a bustling, microscopic biological supply chain. Today we're going to map out the transit network of respiration and show you exactly how gas exchange works conceptually and on a cellular level.
To start, let's anchor ourselves with a core definition. Respiration is the vital process through which living organisms take in oxygen and give out carbon dioxide to release energy. Now, while your lungs are doing the heavy lifting of pulling the air in, the actual transport of these gases is carried out almost entirely by your blood cells. They're the critical delivery vehicles running tirelessly through this immense physiological network to keep you energized and alive.
Which brings us to a massive logistical question. Think about it. How exactly does a single breath travel from your lungs all the way down to your toes? I mean, consider the sheer distances involved and the microscopic scale of the cargo. Moving a molecule of air throughout the entire human body requires an automated, incredibly precise delivery system.
So here's our route for today's explainer. 1. The biological supply chain. 2. The outbound oxygen route. 3. Unloading at the tissues. 4. The carbon dioxide return trip. And finally, 5. By the numbers. Let's get moving.
Part 1. The biological supply chain, framing the cardiovascular network. To really understand gas exchange, it helps to view your body as a massive logistics company. In this analogy, your lungs are the primary loading docks where fresh cargo arrives. Your body's tissues are the delivery destinations that desperately need that cargo to function. And your blood cells? Well, they're the dedicated fleet of transport trucks driving along the highways of your veins and arteries.
This entire logistical operation, moving both the oxygen you need and the carbon dioxide you must expel, relies entirely on the continuous circulation of your blood. The whole shebang rests squarely on the shoulders of these microscopic cells continuously looping through your system.
Part 2. The outbound oxygen route, delivering the good stuff. Let's actually track a fresh shipment of oxygen as it gets inhaled into the lungs, reaches the loading dock, and prepares for its outbound journey to the rest of the body.
You might think oxygen just floats freely in your bloodstream, but the transport methods are highly specialized, and the disparity here is wild. Only a tiny 3% fraction actually dissolves directly into the blood plasma. A staggering 97% is transported by red blood cells. The plasma is really just the river that these red blood cell boats float upon.
So how do these red blood cells pack the cargo? Here's the exact loading procedure. First, oxygen enters the red blood cell. Inside that cell is a pigment called hemoglobin, which, by the way, is exactly what gives your blood its red color. Think of hemoglobin as the specific cargo racks inside our delivery trucks. Up to 4 individual oxygen molecules can bind tightly to a single hemoglobin pigment molecule. Once they lock into place, a new compound is formed called oxyhemoglobin. Our truck is now fully loaded and ready for transit.
Part 3. Unloading at the tissues, the drop-off mechanics. Okay, our fully loaded red blood cells have traveled away from the lungs and arrived at their destinations, your body's tissues. But a major question comes up here. How does the oxygen know it's time to get off the truck?
Well, the body automates this drop-off entirely through environmental contrasts. Up at the loading dock in your lungs, the alveoli, you have high oxygen partial pressure, low hydrogen ion concentration, and low temperature. These are the absolute ideal conditions to form oxyhemoglobin. But look at the delivery destination at the tissues. It's the exact opposite. The tissues have high carbon dioxide partial pressure, high hydrogen ion concentration, and a higher temperature.
These contrasting environmental factors act as an automatic unloading mechanism. Because the tissues have the exact opposite conditions of the alveoli, the oxygen is chemically and physically forced to dissociate from the oxyhemoglobin. That drastic change in pressure and temperature causes the oxygen molecules to literally drop off the delivery truck right where the tissue needs them the most to generate energy.
To put a number on this massive operation, on average, every 100 milliliters of oxygenated blood successfully delivers exactly 5 milliliters of oxygen directly to your tissues. That might sound like a small number locally, but considering how fast your heart pumps, it's an astronomical volume globally.
Part 4. The carbon dioxide return trip, taken out the trash. So our delivery trucks have dropped off their oxygen, but in any good supply chain, you never want a truck driving back to the warehouse empty, right? They've got to haul away the waste products generated by the tissues, which in this case is carbon dioxide.
The return trip splits its cargo quite differently than the outbound oxygen route. Only about 20 to 25% of the carbon dioxide is carried directly by hemoglobin as a compound called carbaminohemoglobin. About 7% is transported in a dissolved state within the plasma, but the vast majority, around 70% of the carbon dioxide, is transported in a completely different form, known as bicarbonate.
So, the crucial point is how this loading happens. Just like with oxygen, it's driven by pressure. The incredibly high partial pressure of carbon dioxide at the tissue level is what forces the CO2 to bind directly with the hemoglobin. That acts as the primary loading mechanism to form carbaminohemoglobin for that 20 to 25% portion of the journey.
But what about that massive 70% bicarbonate route? For that, we need to introduce a hard-working, highly specialized enzyme called carbonic anhydrase. This enzyme is found in extremely high concentrations inside your red blood cells and in smaller quantities within the blood plasma. Carbonic anhydrase is the biological worker that drives this transit. It facilitates the complex chemical reaction that converts carbon dioxide into bicarbonate at the tissues, making this heavy-duty transport route chemically possible.
The trucks then travel all the way back to the lungs. When the deoxygenated blood arrives back at the alveoli, the environment changes again. Here, the high partial pressure of fresh oxygen forces the carbon dioxide to dissociate. The bonds break. That helpful carbonic anhydrase enzyme actually works in reverse, turning the bicarbonate back into CO2. The carbaminohemoglobin releases its hold, and the carbon dioxide is dumped at the loading dock, ready to be exhaled.
Part 5. By the numbers. The efficiency of the system. Let's see how this all builds into an overall measurable network.
Just like we measured the outbound payload, we can measure the return. Every 100 milliliters of deoxygenated blood successfully hauls 4 milliliters of carbon dioxide all the way back to the alveoli loading docks. Bringing it all together, this is the master cheat sheet for the entire system we've covered today, revealing the beautifully balanced efficiency of gas exchange. On the outbound route, the gas is oxygen, relying mostly on red blood cells at 97%, delivering a steady payload of 5 milliliters per 100 milliliters of blood. On the return route, the gas is carbon dioxide, traveling predominantly as bicarbonate at 70% and efficiently removing a payload of 4 milliliters per 100 milliliters of blood. It is a stunningly reliable, perfectly balanced equation. As our source material brilliantly summarizes, respiration is a major and vital process of gas exchange. It's not just breathing. It is a continuous closed-loop transit network of oxygen delivery and carbon dioxide removal. This unbroken chain of microscopic logistics is exactly what powers every single cell in your body, allowing you to release energy and truly thrive. I want to leave you with this thought. We just charted the incredible journey of a single breath. But if your blood can act as such a perfect automated transit network, relying on pressure changes and specialized enzymes to perform millions of deliveries a second, what other hidden logistical miracles are operating inside you right now? Keep asking questions, keep visualizing these amazing biological mechanisms, and stay curious. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.